Hi class, I wanted to go over the visual analysis essay, and for detailed instructions you can go ahead and look at the visual analysis essay module. The first file is actually the instructions, which are also posted under the assignment. Here we have the instructions. The essay is worth 100 points, and this essay is a little bit different than the previous two that we've done. This is an analysis. It is still argumentative in nature. However, you are not arguing against or for a specific issue. Instead, what you are doing is you are sort of arguing for your interpretation of the ad or whatever it is that you are analyzing, whether it be literature, newspaper article, journal article, novel, things like that. So with an analysis, essentially what you are doing is you are looking beyond the surface of what you see. In this case, we are going to analyze a magazine advertisement. It's very important that you choose a magazine advertisement because a lot of magazines have articles and they have other types of columns that are not necessarily advertisements. So if you were to choose something like that, it wouldn't work. You can also choose PSA posters or PSA ads that you find along the way. And you can also choose billboards. Of course, you would need to take a picture of the billboard and use it for your essay. Now, I understand that not everybody has access to magazines. In that case, you can go ahead and pick an ad from Google. However, you need to make sure that the ad is credible, meaning that it comes from an actual advertising company. It wasn't an ad created by just somebody online. If you type ads in Google and then you go to images, there are a lot of ads out there. Some are parodies of real ads. So you want to make sure that you click on the image, go to the website, and that you actually look to see if this was a real ad produced by an actual advertisement company or an ad that was actually used in media for a product or for a specific purpose. So with that in mind, the other thing you want to take into consideration is that you should choose an ad that is from this country. And the reason for that is because each country has different demographics and the advertisements usually tend to reflect that. So if you were to pick an ad from another country, you would need to go ahead and do some research on the culture of that country and provide some background information and discuss how that ad reflects that country's culture and so forth. So as you can see, that would be a lot more work. For this essay, you only need one ad, and try to pick an ad that has at least 2 out of the 3 ethos, pathos, and logos. If you choose an ad that has at least 2 of those, then you can write a whole page. Do not choose an ad that does not make an argument whatsoever or that only has one rhetorical appeal, because then you won't have enough to write about. So try to pick an ad that actually has ethos, pathos, and logos, at least 2 of those. Another thing to consider is that you do not need any sources for this essay. However, if you want to provide background information on a product or on a company, then you can go ahead and do that. Just keep in mind that you need to go ahead and cite it. But sources are not needed for this essay. So as far as the instructions, what you want to go ahead and do is you want to look at how the ad is persuading its audience. You are going to analyze its rhetorical techniques and also its rhetorical appeals. So whenever you're looking at the ad, besides looking at the rhetorical appeals and argumentative techniques, you also want to go ahead and look at the color, the font. You want to go ahead and analyze how that relates to the argument. So another thing you want to do is you want to look at the overall purpose. What is the purpose of the ad? Yes, they are trying to sell you something, but they are usually trying to sell you something beyond just a product. Sometimes they're trying to sell you a family, they're trying to sell you success, they're trying to sell you love, they're trying to sell you sex appeal, all these different things. So you want to go ahead and look at that. And here I have some questions that you might want to consider when you are writing your essay. It is very important that you look at all of these 3. Usually we have ethos ethos is expressed in an ad through the company, for example, Apple, that is considered a credible company. So by putting the logo or by mentioning the brand, that is an appeal to ethos. Also, if it has a famous person who is using this product, that is an appeal to ethos because they are seen as credible. Pathos, anything that has to do with emotion. If they are trying to sell you a sense of adventure, if they are trying to sell you money, all of those appeal to pathos. Logos, not surprisingly, is a little bit more difficult to find in ads because a lot of ads don't use logic. So you can find logos if they have statistics or if they're showing you how the product works. If they show you how the product works, that is definitely logos. If they explain how something works or how something evolved or they explain something, that is logos. Statistics can be logos and ethos as well. So sometimes they do overlap. How I suggest that you organize the essay is I suggest that you organize it by rhetorical appeal. And for that, I'll show you the essay sample. So here we are back in the module, and I have some other links on here. Like for example, I have a PowerPoint that I definitely encourage you to look at. This PowerPoint talks a little bit more about visual arguments, and that's essentially what you are doing here. You are analyzing a visual argument. There are so many different ways to argue. You can have an argument orally through debate. You can have an argument through writing, and you can also have an argument through visual ads, PSA posters, things like that. All of those are considered visual arguments. So moving on, I also included a website about color, and you can definitely go ahead and take a look at this, and it tells you what each color sort of symbolizes. For example, red means action, adventure. So you can go ahead and use this website to help you analyze the color a little bit more. So if we keep going in the module, we will reach the sample essay. This sample essay is basically like the one you are going to write about, so I am going to use it as an example to show you how you should organize your essay. The first thing you want to do in your introduction is obviously you want to go ahead and provide background information. In this case, this person tells us who Andy Roddick is. Now, this person also mentions that he is dating Mandy Moore. And you might say, well, why is that relevant? Well, the reason for that is because if you look here, she found this ad in 17 magazine. So obviously, the audience for 17 magazine are mostly young girls. So this is an older ad. So back then, Mandy Moore was a singer. She is currently on that show called This Is Us. So back then, if people didn't know who Andy Roddick was, they might know him because he dated Mandy Moore, who was more well known as a singer back then. So she explains the person. She also explains the ad, or she describes the ad, and she also describes the text of the ad. Now, this sample has 2 paragraphs as an introduction. You won't find the thesis until you get to this sentence right here. The Roddick ad primarily uses the appeals of ethos and pathos to persuade its audience. So your thesis should contain the purpose of the ad, which according to her, it's to persuade its audience. However, if she was my student, I would tell her persuade its audience of what? Also, your thesis should contain the rhetorical appeals that are used. In this case, she lets us know that she is going to discuss ethos and pathos, and then she lets us know the purpose, which is to persuade its audience. Of course, she would need to explain a little bit further what it should persuade its audience of. So, just to summarize, your introduction should include background information on the ad, right? So you can provide background information on the product, or you can provide background information on the image if it's a well-known person. In this case, she's writing about milk, an ad for milk, so obviously we don't need background information on milk, right? Because we know what milk is. So she provides background information on Andy Roddick. You also need to tell us where you found the ad in the introduction, and then of course go ahead and describe the ad. I will go ahead and post a page with an actual outline. That way you can have an outline to refer back to. So you do not need 2 paragraphs as an introduction. It depends on your ad. If your ad is a little bit more complex, then you can go ahead and devote 2 paragraphs to explaining and providing background information. But if your ad is fairly simple, then you could definitely go ahead and describe the ad and provide the thesis in 1 paragraph. So after she has written the thesis, which is down here, you want to go ahead and start analyzing the rhetorical appeals. She starts off with ethos, and she explains how the ad uses ethos, and she provides examples. I suggest that you organize the essay by rhetorical appeals, meaning that you devote 1 paragraph to each appeal. Don't discuss them all in 1 paragraph, because then that's not enough analysis. Each paragraph should discuss 1 rhetorical appeal. So for example, here, this paragraph discusses ethos. Moving on. And moving on, for some reason, if you have it open on the window, it won't show the rest of the essay. Even if you maximize it, for some reason the formatting is off. So what I suggest that you do is that you click on the file to download it, and then you will be able to see the file in its entirety. So moving on, after she discusses ethos, she discusses pathos. And as you can see, she devotes 1 entire paragraph to pathos. In here, she mentions his body language. She mentions his facial expressions, which all of them can be part of pathos. So, like I said, organize your essay according to rhetorical appeals, and then you can go ahead and incorporate the examples. Like for example, body language, facial expressions, color, font, they typically go under pathos. Font could also apply to ethos. So that's how I suggest that you organize it. Then in your conclusion, what you want to do is you want to summarize your main point, summarize your thesis, summarize what you've discussed so far, and you also need to go ahead and talk about the effectiveness of the ad. Was it effective? What's the significance behind the ad? Go ahead and address that in your essay. Now in this one, she mentions that the ad was very effective. She mentions that milk sales actually went up, and she provides some statistics on that. You don't need to go ahead and do research on whether the item or the product was effective or not. You just need to go ahead and state, based on your analysis, do you think the ad is effective, and what is the significance behind it? And then of course, if you cite any sources, use APA instead of MLA like this example does. So if we go back to the modules, the final thing I want to show you is the actual assignment. And if you go to the actual assignment, again, you will see the instructions that we just went over, but you will also see the rubric. So please go ahead and take a look at the rubric so that you can see what I am looking for and what each criteria is worth. As you can see, the analysis of the appeals to ethos, logos, and pathos, that's worth 35 points. Also the analysis of color, font, text, and image, that is also worth 35 points. So you really want to go ahead and focus on analyzing these things, because that is what is worth the most points. So please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to reading your essays.